the United States, I think if you look at 2008, Danny, if they just would have let the forest fire burn, it would have sucked. But we'd be on our way to recovery way long ago, because if you look at what happened after the great financial crisis in 08, the Fed's balance sheet was 800 billion. And a year ago, it was 9 trillion. So since that point, the way that they remedied the situation is by messing with Mother Nature again. It's all about suppression of interest rates. So they stepped on interest rates, which incentivized massive debt accumulation, both by the public and by the state. But more so, it destroyed price discovery. It creates misallocations of capital and resources. Companies, they hire more, they build on other divisions, they might buy another building. Same thing with people. Low interest rates, they buy a house that they shouldn't buy. That's probably more than they can afford because rates are so low. And they refinance and take equity out of their home and buy a whole bunch of stuff and take trips and do crazy things. And now what? When rates rise, what do? And I think that's the problem here, is that these low interest rates have created an environment that is very difficult to get away from, very, very difficult to get away from. The entire West has the exact same problem. And that's why I focused a lot after Klaus Schwab said there'll be a great reset. You'll own nothing and be happy. I mean, look at house affordability. Because of the distortion and the suppression of rates, and house prices got so high, the majority of young kids could never dream of owning a house right now, especially as rates go higher. So the distortions need to work themselves out. If they just would have let the forest fire burn, it would have sucked and there would have been a lot of pain. But look at a forest after a fire a few years later, it's stronger than ever, as would we have been. Mother Nature will not let us get away from this unscathed. So it's either to fully inflate your way out of the problem, which ends up to higher rates and the whole system blows up. Default. I've gone with find a villain for the last 3 years by incentivizing the world to dump dollars, to shed our petro status, to go green, to weaponize the dollar, to let the country fall apart and make everyone say, shit, why am I holding dollars and treasuries, and dump them? And then we can point to the villains that did it, Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC. And option number 4 is an interesting one too, that you hear more and more and more and more people talking about, and that's to revalue gold. Even Senator Loomis from Wyoming, after the Bitcoin conference, right after Trump spoke, she was the next speaker and said her bill was to revalue the Fed's gold to create enough money to buy the Bitcoin, to take some of that proceed to buy the Bitcoin, to create a strategic Bitcoin account. Just like the head of the Dutch National Bank has been saying for over a year, that the gold and the gold revaluation account, I mean, that's the name of it, you can't make it up. We could revalue it and make our balance sheet pristine, just like that.
When you look at the situation, if you're just honest with yourself, it started in the UK. They tried to normalize, well, it started with us in 2019. We tried to normalize the balance sheet, and you get the reverse repo, or you get the repo market blow up and everything goes upside down, they pivot. And then you get the UK, they try to austerity and normalize their balance sheet, and their pensions almost blow up, they pivot. And then you get us raise rates to 5%, and the banks start blowing up, and now we're talking about pivoting. And you get the Japanese who do this and raise rates just a little bit, and strengthen the yen just a little bit, and everything blows up and they pivot. This is a situation that has been created by messing with Mother Nature, by suppressing interest rates globally for so long, creating and incentivizing so much debt that the bill has to be paid. And you're beginning to see that there are very few outs. It's either succumb to inflation or let the system blow up. Continue to print and give in to inflation, or let the system blow up. And that's what you're seeing in all these Western systems, that we're teetering. And I don't know, it just goes to show how fragile the whole ecosystem really is.
This is the first thing that I want to bring up is, well, why is silver not going higher? Now, this is you can Google this subcommittee, S.2768 on October 14th, 1942, long time ago, right? Sure it is, long time ago. And this is courtesy of John Little of the Pickaxe. He's done some phenomenal research. I'll give him credit. I'm going to piggyback on it, but I think there's a lot to be said for it. So I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs there up till the red line so people can follow me here. The present consumption of silver for war purposes is at the rate of about 100 million ounces a year and is growing rapidly. According to the War Production Board, it's only a matter of months before war demands will have increased sufficiently to require at least 200 million ounces of silver per year. Now, before you go to the next slide, I've been saying for a very long time that silver is used in military applications, and I talk about 500 ounces in the tip of a Tomahawk cruise missile. And I said that 2 years ago at a conference in Vancouver, Jay Martin's Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, one of the best. It's one of only two I go to. People should check it out. Anyways, I said that in my speech. And I get off the podium and I'm walking away and talking to people. And a guy comes up to me and says, you know, I helped develop the Patriot missile and the Tomahawk cruise missile. I am a consultant for the Department of Defense. I know there is silver in it. I don't know how much, but I want to check that out and get back to you. And I forgot about it because he never got back to me. And then I did a different speech, but at the same conference this year in January. And there he was when I was done. He says, you know, he has a stack of pictures with him. He says, what I'm about to tell you is all declassified, but you are right. I'll be son of a gun. You're right. There's between 13 and 14 kilograms of silver in a Tomahawk cruise missile. He says, I helped design it. And he showed me all these pictures of how they were designed to come out of a tube of a submarine, but they had challenges having them launch vertically. And they had this platform in the ocean, just off the coast of California. He was showing me them launching it, all sorts of stuff. But he said, you're right. Okay. So here it is in 1942 with military applications that are far less advanced. They needed 200 million ounces of silver in World War II. How many do you think we need now with all of the missiles that are being fired all around the globe that are produced by the military industrial complex? People that are probably a whole lot more powerful than the people we think are powerful, such as the president. The military industrial complex seems to be ruling the roost these days. All right, so go to the next slide, just so people can understand where I'm going with this. All right, do we see something missing here is the title. So let's take a look at we see that there is a 265 million ounce shortfall approximately projected this year, and might even be a little bit more than that. But the point of it is, look at the demand. You have industrial, electrical and electronics, of which photovoltaics, that's solar panels, brazing alloys and solders, other industrial, photography, jewelry, silverware. Where the hell is military? If we needed 200 million ounces in 1942, and now we have missiles that are far more advanced, and stealth bombers and nuclear powered submarines, you tell me none of this stuff needs silver? Right. Where did Gaddafi's gold go? Where did Hussein's gold go? Where did the 12 billion in gold that the Ukrainians sold to fight the war, for their war efforts, where did that gold go? So my point is that don't believe the numbers that anyone says, whether it's the United States or China. If indeed they're going to revalue gold, then they are using the suppression of the Western paper price to accumulate it. And we're seeing that all around the globe. In fact, China is the second largest producer of silver in the world. And I've validated on 2 interviews I've done in the last week with silver mining executives, who are saying China is going all around Latin America, buying all the silver doré and silver concentrate, paying 2 to 3 times what the West will pay for it, and shipping it home and refining it there, because it didn't come off of an exchange. It doesn't reflect the price, and you have no idea how much they got. And so they're going to great efforts, great lengths to hide, as are all the central banks, including ours. So yes, if a revaluation is in the cards, which in my soul, I believe it will be, largely in part because we've already heard that the new unit settlement currency that Dilma Rousseff, the head of the BRICS New Development Bank, former president of Brazil, has already said, in principle, we have agreed to it. There will be a meeting in September in China to ratify it, with intentions of rolling out in October. Gold is taking on a new role. And I think indeed for those central banks who now are buying it faster than any time in central bank history in over 100 years, using the suppression to run cover for it, why would they want anyone to know how much they actually do hold, if indeed it gives them a seat at the table by how much they do hold? And by letting everyone know how much they're acquiring and repatriating, all that really does is incentivize everyone else to take a closer look at something that has gone unnoticed for far too long. Talking about Turkey and India and Poland being at the top of the food chain in terms of purchasing. And it was when I heard that, I went back through some notes that I had maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And it was in 2021 that the head of the Polish National Bank, Adam Glapiński, and he said, he was talking about why they were expanding their gold holdings. He said, Gold will retain its value even when someone cuts off the power to the global financial system, destroying traditional assets based on electronic accounting records. Of course, we do not assume that this will happen, but as the saying goes, forewarned is always insured. And the central bank is required to be prepared for even the most unfavorable circumstances. That's why we see a special place for gold in our foreign exchange management. Of course, in that article, I think they talk about the head of the Dutch National Bank, who talks about if there's a financial crisis and price will skyrocket, and the official gold reserves can be used to underpin a new gold standard, according to the Dutch National Bank. So when you talk about the central bankers, they know the playbook, and that's the truth. And I think most of the numbers that are reported in these central bank holdings are massively understated. But that's okay. It's still quite obvious that they are the ones that have been leading the charge in gold's rise.
Then we have the rise of the BRICS. And when you talk about the BRICS, it is a massive threat to everything that we hold dear right now. And I say that to you for many reasons, all of which I will discuss in a moment. So last year, and by the way, all along the way, the central banks are massively buying gold. And using the suppression of the Western paper markets, COMEX and the London Bullion Metals Exchange, which are being suppressed by bullion banks, 8 of them in particular, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Citibank, Bank of America, HSBC. These are the banks that have been holding the price of gold and silver down. And if you don't believe that, all you need to do is realize that JP Morgan paid a $920 million fine in 2022 to the Justice Department, the largest fine they've ever handed out for manipulating the gold market. And this is the bank that is still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust, SLV, and partial custodian of GLD, the fourth largest stockpile of gold in the world. They are criminal banks. They made $1 billion in 2022. Their gold desk did. The company itself makes $1 billion a month. The gold desk made $1 billion that year. They were fined $920 million. Their head trader, guy I know, had lunch with at a conference, is in prison right now, but they still walked away $80 million positive and continue to be the administrator of the world's largest silver trust.
Go home, talk to some of your buddies from high school, talk to some of your friends you grew up with, and ask them if they know what the BRICS are, if they know what the Belt Road is, if they know why the dollar was the world reserve currency, out of the petrodollar. Do they know what Saudi Arabia has done? All of these things, they will look at you with a blank stare. And the sad part about it is that people can't get out of the way of what they don't see coming. Yeah. And even people that are very well read, pardon my French, they're reading the wrong shit. Yeah. And they will get run over by what's coming. And I really do believe this, and I hate to say it. I truly do. And I think it's gaining legitimacy and reality, so much so that the title of my speech yesterday was, "Is it too foolish to not be planned?" I wanted to call it, "Is it too stupid to be stupid?" But same thing. It's just the actions that we have taken are ridiculous. And then you look at the mismanagement of the world reserve currency, the weaponization of the dollar. You look at the executive order Biden signed 4 years ago to go green. And if that weren't bad enough, if that was all it was, I'd still think we have a pretty well fighting chance because we're the United States and we do best with our back to the wall. You add into it 18 million people in here illegally, people looking around the world, what the hell happened to their immigration system where everyone's supposed to come in legally and assimilate? You look at the judicial system, people around the world saying, is it two-tiered? I'm not sure. It sure looks that way. You look at our electoral system and people are saying, is it fair? It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, people are wondering, is it fair? Was it rigged? I'm not commenting on that, but simply to say the perception is being questioned. The cornerstones of this country, the lawlessness in the cities, the breaking away from the nuclear family, the wokeness, where merit is out the window, but lifestyle preferences are front and center. These are things that when you and I were kids would have been considered laughable. You would hold the door for a lady, you would say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to a police officer, to the principal. You would do these things because that's how we were brought up, and you said the Pledge of the Allegiance. And I just think that those are the things that made this country special. Respect, honor, duty, religion, God, all of these things are the fabric of this country that have just disappeared. And Every little boy and girl when we were kids that grew up around the world wanted to wear Levi's jeans and listen to rock and roll and come visit the United States. And you start to wonder, when you look at what's happening on the college campuses, four cops beat up in Queens yesterday, broad daylight. When you see this kind of stuff happening around the world, which is not lost on our foes or our allies, I think you have to wonder, I mean, is this too stupid to be stupid? How can we allow this to happen to our wonderful country, let alone the misgivings that we've fostered around the world? It's a perfect storm for a very large, once-in-a-generation change. And like I said, you can't get out of the way of what you don't see coming.
If the dollar gets too strong, it blows everyone else up. If it gets too weak, it destroys things and distorts things here. This is why central bankers just should go. We went, I don't know, 180 years on a gold standard without any inflation or any problems. And contrary to popular demand, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think it's a problem, and it's one that this is not the end of it just because we have a week of calm as the Japanese financial minister backs off of his aspirations of strengthening the yen and raising interest rates. That, I think, leads me to one of the things I really wanted to talk about with you, and that is the article in Forbes magazine. Because most of the articles that I've seen, if not all, or the not commercials, like spots on CNN or Fox or whatever, when they talk about gold, they say it could be really bullish and then, but, and the but always, spills hot water on whatever positive vibe there would have been regarding the message. And I look at Forbes as a part of the establishment. But anyways, there was an article. I just wanted to read it real quick because I think it's one of the very first times I've seen an article in a Western outlet that is very favorable to gold. Now, is that article you put up from Forbes also?
Yeah.
Well, now they're two in a row, and I think that maybe Forbes is starting to get the drift. So let me just read something to you. It says it's called. It's hard to believe, but the world is beginning to lurch towards a gold-based monetary system. This, despite the fact that the historical gold standard is held in almost universal contempt by economists and financial officials. Contrary to numerous myths based on ignorance, the system worked. The U.S. was on a gold-based system for 180 years until the early 1970s. We never had inflation when the dollar's value was tied to the yellow metal, and the U.S. experienced the greatest long-term economic growth in human history. The signs of change are here. One is that the central banks in recent years have been purchasing gold at record levels. Buyers include China, India, and Russia, and a number of other nations such as Poland. I think these are the kind of realities that we're now facing. So rather than not being able to see what's coming and be blindsided by it, as most people will never be able to see what's coming and therefore have no ability to get out of the way of what is coming, I'd rather know what's coming, be able to survive and maybe even thrive, because people focus very often on gold's role as being something for a calamity. You're proving that it can be used as a utility. And I think there'll be opportunities at the same time when the dust settles. This isn't the end of the Western world, but there will be changes. And those people who have been able to proactively sidestep and maneuver these changes in what the biggest money in the world is accumulating, I think you have a better chance to get out of the way, to survive and to thrive and to find opportunities when the dust settles. So it should be fun to ride shotgun with you over the next few months leading up to the election and watch this all unfold in real time.